Did you know that one of the most controversial movies ever made was born during the darkest time in world history? 1942 was the middle of World War II, and most people were making serious, heroic war films. But then director Ernst Lubitsch did something shocking. He made a comedy about Nazis. A real dark, hilarious comedy. Audiences didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. Some people walked out of theaters. Others laughed until they couldn't breathe. This film was so bold, so unusual, that it almost destroyed careers. It asked a dangerous question. Can you make people laugh about the worst things? Today, we know the answer is yes. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about to be or not to be. Number 20. The timing was everything. When Ernst Lubitsch started making this film in 1941, he didn't expect the world to explode. The script was written before America entered World War II. Then Pearl Harbor happened. Suddenly, making jokes about Nazis felt wrong to millions of people. Soldiers were dying. Families were losing loved ones. And here was this movie, full of laughs and tricks and silly moments about the very enemy killing American boys. The studio almost shut down production. Theater owners were nervous. Critics prepared their attacks. What should have felt like a funny escape suddenly felt like bad taste. Lubitsch believed so deeply in his film that he refused to change it. The comedy was his weapon, not a weapon to hurt, but to show that evil couldn't make us stop laughing. That wasn't cowardice. It was courage. Number 19. Jack Benny. Almost lost everything. Jack Benny was already a huge star before this film. Radio audiences loved him. People trusted him. He was funny, charming, and safe. Then he signed up to play a Polish actor pretending to be a German spy. The role meant he had to be sneaky, selfish, and willing to trick everyone. Some people thought this would ruin his image forever. His advisors told him to turn it down. Radio sponsors worried they'd lose money. But Benny saw something in the script. He understood that playing a flawed character would make him seem more real, more human. He was right. The movie made him look braver, not weaker. It showed audiences that he could do more than make them smile. He could make them think. That choice to take a risk changed how people saw him for the rest of his life. Number 18. Carole Lombard's Ghost. The film's leading lady was supposed to be Carole Lombard, one of the brightest stars in Hollywood. She was beautiful, funny, and fearless. Then in 1942, before shooting even started, Lombard died in a plane crash. The production stopped. The studio had to find a replacement fast. They chose Claudette Colbert, another incredible actress, but the film carried Lombard's memory with it. Some people wondered if making this comedy was disrespectful, like laughing at a funeral. But others believed the film honored her spirit. She had loved comedy. She had loved taking risks. Lubitsch made sure every funny moment, every bold scene channeled her energy. The movie became a tribute to her courage and her gift for making people laugh. What should have been a curse became a blessing. Number 17. The Forbidden Joke. There was one scene that almost got the film banned. Jack Benny's character lies to a spy, saying he's the great Polish actor, Joseph Tura. The spy responds, "What's so great about you?" It sounds like a simple joke, but the meaning was huge. They were making fun of the very idea of Nazi superiority. The Nazis believed they were better than everyone else. This movie said, "No, you're not. You're just people who tell stupid lies." Nazi leaders banned the film immediately. They hated it so much, they made it illegal in Germany. But that's exactly what Lubitsch wanted. He wasn't trying to win a popularity contest. He was using laughter as rebellion. That wasn't just entertainment. It was resistance. Number 16. The Office was real history. The Warsaw that appears in the film was built in Hollywood studios. Every street corner, every doorway, every shadow was designed to look real. But here's what's strange. While actors were playing Poles under Nazi occupation, real Poles in Eastern Europe were living through the actual horror. The Warsaw Uprising hadn't happened yet. The film came out while people were still trapped, still suffering. Some historians think Lubitsch was playing with fire, making a comedy about real people's real pain. Others say he was telling the only truth he could at the time, that laughter doesn't erase suffering, but it reminds us we're still human. The painted sets of Warsaw on a Hollywood soundstage became a weird mirror of reality. What was fake on screen honored something very real in the world. Number 15. The Spies' Real Fear. Robert Stack played the role of a Nazi spy who spies on the theater group. He was a young actor trying to prove himself. Making this film meant he had to become something ugly, suspicious, cruel, suspicious. Every scene, he had to pretend to enjoy power and feel superior. After days on set, Stack would go home feeling sick. Not sick from acting, sick from spending so much time inside a twisted mind. Other actors noticed he barely smiled between takes. He carried the weight of that character with him. That wasn't just good acting, that was real darkness. Yet, that darkness made the comedy brighter. When the theater group finally tricks him, audiences cheered, not just because it was funny, but because Stack had made evil feel so real that defeating it felt satisfying. His pain created the movie's power. Number 14. The Invisible Audience. When the film first showed in theaters, many audiences sat in total silence. Not angry silence, confused silence. They didn't know if they were allowed to laugh. Laughing at Nazis seemed wrong, but slowly one person would chuckle, then another. Then the whole theater would explode. After that first laugh broke the silence, everything changed. It was like people needed permission. Once they gave themselves permission, they laughed harder than they would have at any normal comedy. The director understood this. He built the film knowing audiences would struggle with their own feelings. He trusted them to find the laughter inside their own confusion. That took courage, believing that an audience is smart enough to understand a joke so complicated. That's the true power of this film. It didn't just make people laugh. It made them feel brave for laughing. Number 13. The Shakespeare Connection. The title comes from a famous line in Hamlet, "To be or not to be." Shakespeare wrote those words about life, death, and survival. When Lubitsch used them, he was saying something quiet but powerful. This movie is about more than just war or comedy. It's about whether we keep living, keep laughing, keep being human when the world wants us to stop. The theater group in the film performs Shakespeare. They speak poetry while bombs fall. They tell stories while danger surrounds them. This wasn't random. Lubitsch was saying that art, real art, Shakespeare's art, survives tyrants. Governments can fall, wars can end. But if we keep telling stories, we win. That's why the film feels like a love letter to theater, to drama, to human creativity. It's saying, this is why we perform. This is why stories matter. Shakespeare knew it. Lubitsch knew it. That wasn't just clever. That was sacred. Number 12. The Costume Designer's Secret. The costumes in the film were designed to be almost too perfect. The Nazi uniforms were sharp, clean, and impressive. That wasn't an accident. The costume designer wanted audiences to understand something. Evil can look beautiful on the outside. Power can be attractive. That's what makes it dangerous. By making the uniforms so impressive, the film showed how people fall under the spell of fascism. They're not seduced by ugliness. They're seduced by strength, order, and pride. The theater group wears ordinary clothes, softer, sadder, more wrinkled. But they're the real heroes. The film is saying, don't be fooled by fancy uniforms and flags. Real strength comes from inside. It took real courage to make evil look so good, because it forces audiences to see the truth. We're all capable of being seduced by power. That lesson was hidden in every stitch. Number 11. The ending. Almost didn't happen. In the original script, the film ended differently. The characters didn't escape. They got caught. The studio wanted to change it. Audiences will be depressed, producers argued. They'll leave angry, not laughing. But Lubitsch fought them. He rewrote the ending, and the ending he created is one of the most brilliant moments in cinema. The theater group makes it to freedom. But the final shot is ambiguous. We don't quite know if they'll make it. It's funny, hopeful, and uncertain, all at the same time. Lubitsch understood something the studio didn't. A happy ending that feels too easy is boring. But an ending that makes audiences think and feel, that ends in their hearts, not in their minds, that stays with them forever. That wasn't giving the studio what they wanted. That was giving audiences what they needed. Number 10. The real spies in the room. Some film historians believe that while this movie was being made, real FBI agents came to the set. They weren't there to stop production. They were there to watch it. America was at war. A movie about spies, about Nazi infiltration, about warfare. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a security concern. Some accounts say agents sat in the back of the theater during test screenings, taking notes. They wanted to know if the film would help America's war effort or hurt it. They wanted to know if the comedy was too dangerous. No one ever confirmed this officially, but the possibility that real spies watched a fictional spy movie while real war happened outside feels like a story only life could write. If it's true, it means this film was important enough to watch. That's not just a fact, that's a compliment. Number 9. Hamlet and Macbeth. Got real. The theater group in the film performs Shakespeare. They're supposed to be professional actors putting on shows. So the Shakespeare scenes had to be real, not silly, not obviously fake, but genuinely good. This meant they hired real Shakespearean actors, people who had trained for years, who had performed on stages, who understood the craft. Watching them side by side with comedians was jarring and beautiful. When Jack Benny and Carole Lombard's replacement had to speak Shakespeare, it grounded the entire film. It said, these are real artists. They're not clowns. They're people with skill, with depth, with something to say. The comedy became more powerful because it was played by people who understood real theater. The jokes hit harder because we believed in the characters' humanity. That's a strange lesson to learn from a comedy. Maybe the funniest moments come when you cast real professionals instead of just funny people. Number 8. The longest joke in movie history. There's a scene where Jack Benny's character stands in front of a mirror and practices saying, Heil Hitler, over and over, in different ways, with different expressions. It goes on for what feels like forever. It's so long that audiences start to forget what's funny about it. Then you realize, that's the joke. The absurdity of the repetition becomes the humor. Hitler's famous salute and greeting become meaningless because they're repeated too many times. Fascism, the scene suggests, falls apart when you examine it too closely. When you repeat its mantras over and over, they sound hollow. This scene lasted nearly 2 minutes, which was insanely long for comedy in 1942. Other directors said Lubitsch was crazy. But he understood something about how humor works. Sometimes the longest joke is the truest joke. Sometimes you have to let the audience sit in discomfort before they understand why something is funny. That wasn't lazy. That was genius. Number 7. The actors hated each other, and it showed behind the scenes. Some of the actors didn't get along. Tension ran high. Egos clashed. But Lubitsch realized something. That tension made the comedy better. When characters had real conflict underneath their humor, the jokes felt sharper. When actors weren't comfortable with each other, their discomfort became part of the comedy. He didn't try to fix the relationships. He used them. Modern directors might call this toxic and shut it down. But Lubitsch was an old-school director who understood that art isn't always comfortable. Sometimes the best performances come when actors are pushed, challenged, maybe even a little bit angry. The film's energy comes partly from those real conflicts. What looked perfect on screen was built on real disagreement. That's not a beautiful story about harmony. That's the actual mess of making art. Number 6. The Revenge of the Critic. When the film came out, the New York Times gave it a terrible review. The critic said it was disrespectful to people suffering in the war. He said Lubitsch should be ashamed. The review was so harsh that it could have ended the film's career before it even started. But something unexpected happened. Other critics read that review, and instead of agreeing, they disagreed loudly. They defended the film. They said Lubitsch was a genius. They said the critic was wrong. The argument about the film became bigger than the film itself. People wanted to see it just to decide for themselves. The negative review accidentally became the best advertisement the movie could have gotten. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to an artist is the best thing. That wasn't Lubitsch's plan. That was just what life decided to do. Number 5. The Lost Scenes. There were scenes shot for this film that never made it to theaters. They're lost now, probably destroyed decades ago. No copies exist, but old crew members remembered them. They talked about moments that were too dark, too political, too aggressive, even for a film about Nazi infiltration. One story says there was a scene where the theater group mocked Hitler's speeches so directly that the studio ordered it cut. Whether these scenes actually existed or whether they're just Hollywood legends, no one knows anymore. But the possibility that scenes existed that were even more daring than what we see, that idea haunts the film. It suggests there's a version of this movie that was even braver, even more dangerous. What we have is brilliant, but what we don't have might have been revolutionary. Sometimes the most powerful art is the art we'll never see. Number 4. The film that changed nothing and everything. After the war ended, this film wasn't shown much. For years, it was almost forgotten. Then, decades later, critics rediscovered it. They realized it was one of the most important films ever made. But here's the weird part. Making and releasing the film didn't stop the war. It didn't save lives. It didn't defeat Hitler. In terms of practical impact, it did nothing. But in terms of artistic impact, it changed everything. It proved that you could make serious art about serious subjects while still making people laugh. It showed that comedy could be a tool of resistance. It inspired filmmakers for generations. So the film accomplished nothing and everything at the same time. That's the strange power of art. It doesn't always change the world tomorrow. But it changes the world inside people. And that change spreads slowly, then all at once. Number 3. The playwright behind the camera. Ernst Lubitsch wasn't just a director. He was a thinker, a philosopher, a man who believed in the power of human creativity. Before he made films, he worked in theater. He understood that theater and film are different, but they come from the same place, the human desire to tell stories. When he directed this film, he kept thinking like a theater director. He cared about performances more than special effects. He cared about words more than spectacle. He made decisions that a pure filmmaker might not make. This gave the film its strange power. It feels like a play captured on camera, intimate, character-driven, dependent on the actor's humanity. In a world of big movie moments, Lubitsch was saying, the smallest moments matter the most. A look, a pause, a single word can be more powerful than explosions. That philosophy came from someone who lived his whole life in art. It wasn't just a job. It was a calling. Number 2. The actress who saved the film. When Carole Lombard died, the production faced a crisis. Finding a replacement was more than just casting. It was about finding someone who understood what Lubitsch was trying to do. Claudette Colbert not only understood, she elevated the entire project. Her chemistry with Jack Benny was perfect. Her comedic timing was impeccable. Her ability to balance humor with humanity made the film work. Some people believe that if the original casting had stayed the same, the film would have been very different. Colbert brought something Lombard might not have. That's not saying anything bad about Lombard. It's saying that sometimes tragedy opens doors. Sometimes the worst thing leads to something unexpected and beautiful. Colbert's performance became one of the great unsung contributions to cinema. She wasn't the first choice, but she might have been exactly who the film needed. That's how art works sometimes, not through planning, but through grace. Number 1. The question that never got answered. At its heart, this film asks one question: is it ever okay to laugh at evil? The film never answers the question directly. Instead, it lets audiences answer it themselves. Some people who saw it in 1942 decided it was wrong to laugh. Others decided it was necessary. Over 80 years later, people are still debating it. That's the sign of great art. It doesn't close the conversation. It opens it. It doesn't tell you what to think. It challenges you to think. Lubitsch knew this. He made a film that was deliberately confusing, deliberately complicated, deliberately designed to make people uncomfortable. He didn't do this to be difficult. He did it because he believed that uncomfortable conversations are the most important ones. That wasn't just filmmaking. That was a faith in human beings, a belief that we're smart enough, brave enough, and good enough to sit with hard questions. That's why the film still matters, not because it's perfect, but because it's true. Bonus fact: the lost rushes. In the vault of an old Hollywood storage facility, boxes of film from 1942 were discovered years later. Among them were thousands of feet of unused footage from To Be or Not to Be. The rushes, the raw, unedited scenes, show actors trying different versions of jokes, different deliveries, different moments. Watching actors work, experiment, fail, then succeed shows the real process of filmmaking. There are moments of laughter between takes. There are moments of exhaustion. There are moments where you see the artist trying to find the truth beneath the humor. These rushes were never meant to be seen. They're the private conversation between actor and director. But they survived. And when film historians finally got to see them, they understood something new. Lubitsch and his actors were working harder than anyone realized. They were searching, experimenting, failing, then trying again. The finished film is brilliant. But the journey to get there, that was a masterclass in how art actually gets made. Old tools, new magic. To Be or Not to Be taught us something we still need to remember. In the darkest times, creativity matters. Laughter matters. Theater matters. The people making art matter. This film wasn't made by soldiers or politicians. It was made by artists who believe that the human spirit doesn't break under pressure. It creates. It makes jokes. It tells stories. It performs Shakespeare while the world burns. That's not escapism. That's survival. That's resistance. Every actor, every crew member, every person who believed in this film was saying, "We will not let fear win. We will not let evil silence our creativity. We will keep making art, and through that art, we'll remind each other that we're still human." If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time. Because in the end, the greatest power we have isn't weapons or politics. It's imagination. It's the courage to tell stories. And it's the wisdom to laugh when laughter is the bravest thing we can do.